Imagine this, you stop replying, not dramatically, not with a speech, just silence. And suddenly, the person who barely noticed you before starts circling back, watching your stories, finding excuses to text. And here's the uncomfortable question that hits most people right in the chest. Why did ignoring them do more than all the effort you poured in before? That question isn't just frustrating, it's unsettling. Because it forces you to confront a fear we rarely say out loud. What if my constant availability was the very thing pushing them away? Most people think ignoring someone works because it's a tactic, a trick, a power move. But if that were true, it would fail most of the time. And yet, over and over again, it works, sometimes almost painfully well, not because you're playing games, but because you've accidentally stepped into a deep psychological trigger that governs attraction far more than chemistry or compatibility. Let me pull you into a moment you'll recognize. You meet someone, there's excitement. You lean in emotionally, maybe faster than you planned. You reply quickly, you show interest clearly, you're consistent, present, reliable. On paper, that sounds like the healthiest thing in the world, and yet something shifts. Their energy cools, responses slow, plans become vague, and your mind starts doing what it does best under uncertainty, spiraling. So you try harder, you explain yourself better, you show them how much you care, and here's the part no one warns you about. Every extra step you take to close the gap actually widens it. Not because you're too much, but because attraction doesn't grow in certainty, it grows in contrast. Ignoring them disrupts that entire dynamic. When you pull back even slightly, their brain loses something it had quietly taken for granted, access to you. And the human brain is wired to respond more intensely to potential loss than guaranteed gain. That's not romance, that's neuroscience. Now, before you panic and think, so I should just disappear and play cold? No, because that's where people get this completely wrong. Ignoring doesn't work when it's fueled by bitterness or manipulation. In fact, that backfires fast. What works is what ignoring signals psychologically. It signals self-sufficiency. It signals that your life is full enough that you're not anxiously monitoring someone else's reactions. And here's a slightly uncomfortable truth. Confidence is not something you declare. It's something other people infer when you stop over-explaining yourself. And yes, there's a moment where ignoring them creates fear. Not fear of losing you forever, but fear of losing their position in your life. And that fear wakes people up. But here's the twist. Most people never see coming. The real power of ignoring them isn't what it does to them. It's what it starts doing to you. And that internal shift is where everything changes. Because once you feel that shift, you'll realize why chasing never felt attractive in the first place, and why pulling back does something far more dangerous to the dynamic than any message you could ever send. There's a subtle moment that happens after you pull back, and it's almost invisible if you're not paying attention. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your instincts scream at you to fix things, to reach out, to smooth the silence. Your phone feels heavier. You check it more than you want to admit. And right there is the crossroads most people miss. Because if you can sit through that discomfort without reacting, something fascinating starts to unfold on the other side. The dynamic flips, not dramatically, not overnight, but psychologically. When you stop reaching, the other person is forced to fill in the gaps. Before, you were doing all the emotional labor. You were clarifying intentions, maintaining momentum, keeping the connection alive. Now, there's space. And the human mind hates empty space. It rushes to explain it. Here's where imagination kicks in. When someone no longer has constant access to you, they start asking questions they never needed to ask before. What are they doing? Why aren't they chasing? Did I misread how invested they were? And suddenly the emotional investment they avoided earlier sneaks up on them when you're no longer trying to extract it. This is why ignoring them feels so powerful and so confusing, because nothing actually changed externally. You didn't become more attractive overnight. You didn't say anything clever. You simply removed the certainty. And certainty is comfort, but mystery is what activates desire. Now, let me interrupt this for a second, because this is usually where someone says, so the answer is just to be distant forever? Ow! That's how you end up alone. Convincing yourself you're emotionally unavailable by choice. That's not confidence. That's fear in a tuxedo. The real shift happens when ignoring them forces you out of a reactive state. You stop monitoring every reply for meaning. You stop tying your self-worth to their responsiveness. And here's the paradox. The less you need the outcome, the more attractive you become within it. People don't pull away because you care. They pull away because they can feel when your emotional balance depends on them. That pressure doesn't feel like love on the receiving end. It feels like responsibility. And most people instinctively retreat from responsibility they didn't ask for. When you pull back, you remove that weight. You're no longer silently asking them to validate you. You're no longer auditioning for their attention. And that absence of pressure creates curiosity. Think about it this way. When you were always there, they didn't need to choose you. You were simply available. But when you step back, choosing you becomes an active decision. And humans value what they have to consciously choose. This is also why ignoring them doesn't work when it's rushed or resentful. If you're pulling away while secretly hoping they notice, the energy doesn't change. You're still emotionally chasing, just quietly, and people sense that. But when you genuinely redirect your focus, your time, your energy, your identity, something shifts in how you show up everywhere. Your messages feel lighter. Your presence feels grounded. And that's when they start leaning in, often without even realizing why. And here's the part most people don't see coming. Once they start leaning in, you face a new decision. Because regaining their attention feels intoxicating. But if you're not careful, you'll be tempted to snap right back into the old pattern that pushed them away in the first place. And that's where the real test begins. This is where most people stumble without realizing it. They've seen the shift. The messages start coming, the calls increase, the energy changes, but their brain immediately says, finally, I need to respond exactly how I did before to lock this in. And that's the exact moment to pause. Because what got you here won't keep you here. You see, the psychology of attraction isn't a one-way street. It's a rhythm, a balance between presence and absence, desire and curiosity. When you step back, you activate the pull. When you step in too quickly, you undo the magic you just created. It's like watching someone toss a boomerang. If you throw it too hard or catch it too soon, it loses its arc. And here's a little secret. Most people never hear, humans are wired to value what feels earned. When someone works to maintain access to you, not by manipulation, but through genuine effort and attention, it creates a subtle form of emotional investment. That investment is far stronger than any words, any gifts, any declarations could produce. Imagine a scenario. You stop responding immediately. You live your life fully. You engage in things that light you up. And one day they text. But instead of replying instantly, you respond when it genuinely fits your rhythm. That delay is not about playing games. It's about maintaining alignment with your own energy. And that alignment, it's magnetic. Now, let's be honest, this isn't easy. There's a temptation to test them, to poke, to prod, but that undermines the whole psychological mechanism at play. Ignoring in this sense isn't absence for absence's sake. It's presence with boundaries. It communicates, I have a life, I have standards, I have self-respect. And when someone senses that, they feel compelled to meet you in that same space. Here's where it gets really interesting. Why start leaning in? Their behavior changes in subtle but powerful ways. They initiate conversations without prompting. They seek your perspective. They demonstrate interest in a more meaningful, consistent way. And notice this, it's not about control, it's about choice. The choice becomes theirs and choice is irresistible. But the ultimate lesson in this is something most people ignore. Pulling back isn't about making them chase you endlessly. It's about reclaiming yourself while simultaneously activating desire. And that's the paradox. The less you need to control the outcome, the more likely the outcome becomes. Exactly what you want. And here's the kicker that most people never see coming. Once you understand this, you realize the power has never been in manipulation, tricks, or games. The power has always been in clarity, self-respect, and letting the natural psychology of human desire do the work for you. Because attraction isn't something you make happen with effort. It's something you allow to happen by showing up as someone worth choosing. And ignoring in the right way doesn't break that principle. It amplifies it. And when that principle takes root, it transforms not just the connection with them, but how you show up in every relationship moving forward. And this is where it becomes truly transformative. Because once you've experienced the shift, watching someone lean in without you chasing, seeing the energy change without a single desperate message, you start to internalize a truth that most people spend a lifetime missing. Your worth is never defined by someone else's attention. Think about it. all the times you've stressed over replies, over text tones, over whether someone noticed your effort. It's exhausting. And what does it actually create? Anxiety, overthinking, and in many cases, the very distance you were trying to avoid. When you stop reacting, you break that cycle. You remove the emotional strings they've been unconsciously tugging at. And here's the paradox that always surprises people. The moment you stop performing for validation, you become more magnetic. Not because you've become a mystery, not because you're cold, but because your emotional availability is now intentional. You're present, yes, but on your terms. And humans by design are drawn to that kind of balanced energy. At this stage, something subtle yet powerful happens in their mind. They begin to compare the connection they had with you when you were constantly available to the energy you radiate now. And that comparison? It triggers curiosity, sometimes even a little regret, but more importantly, a renewed sense of desire. They start noticing things they didn't before, the laughter they missed, the spark they overlooked, the ease of your presence they took for granted. Now, this isn't about revenge or getting back at someone. It's deeper than that. Ignoring in this way is a mirror. It shows them what they were missing while simultaneously giving you the space to reclaim your confidence. It teaches the unconscious lesson that attraction is not a commodity. You don't give it away for free, and it isn't something anyone can demand from you. And here's the most important part that people rarely articulate. Ignoring someone in this intelligent, self-respecting way cultivates emotional independence. It rewires your internal narrative from, I need them to feel complete, to, I am complete, and now anyone who wants to be with me must meet me in that space. That shift changes the way they perceive you, the way you perceive yourself, and the dynamic between you in ways that 1,000 messages never could. Finally, imagine a future where you approach relationships this way, not from fear, not from anxiety, not from the compulsion to chase, but from understanding the psychology that governs human attraction, where your energy creates pull naturally without manipulation, where the people who are right for you lean in because they genuinely want to, not because they have been pressured or convinced. And at that point, ignoring someone stops being a tactic. It becomes a principle, a reflection of self-respect, awareness, and the quiet magnetic confidence that comes from knowing your value, because attraction doesn't need to be forced. It responds to presence, to choice, and to the subtle, irresistible tension that only exists when both people have the freedom to engage or walk away. And once you see that, you realize something profound. The silent power of stepping back isn't just about them. It's about unlocking a version of yourself that finally commands respect, desire, and genuine connection without ever having to chase it. And this is where most people completely miss the subtlety, because once you understand that ignoring someone isn't about punishment or games, you start to notice the shifts everywhere, in the way people interact with you, in the way opportunities show up, in the way your own confidence grows. That internal transformation becomes magnetic in ways you didn't anticipate. Here's the thing. Humans are wired to respond to contrast. When everything is predictable, when someone is always available, their brain doesn't have to engage. But when you pull back, when you create a small, meaningful gap, you introduce unpredictability. And unpredictability triggers the mind's reward system. It creates excitement. It creates curiosity. It even sparks a little nervous energy, which is oddly addictive. And let's be honest, most of us crave that little spark, even if we don't admit it. That's why ignoring someone in this conscious, intentional way works so effectively. It flips the dynamic. They're no longer chasing something guaranteed. They're chasing something they have to actively choose. And choice, as you now understand, is far more emotionally binding than compliance. But here's a twist most people never see coming. The real power of ignoring isn't just in what it does for attraction, it's in what it does for your clarity. Suddenly you see who genuinely values your presence and who is only comfortable taking it for granted. Suddenly the distractions fall away, the noise disappears, and what remains is the people and experiences that truly deserve your energy. Think about that for a moment. The energy you spent worrying, chasing, explaining, it's not wasted, it's redirected. And in doing so, you're not just influencing someone else's behavior, you're reclaiming your time, your peace, your confidence. And that shift, that's what makes every connection you cultivate after this far more intentional and far more magnetic. And this is why, in the end, ignoring someone intelligently isn't about being distant. It's about being fully present with yourself while allowing others to step up or step away. It's about creating a balance where your life, your energy, and your emotions are no longer controlled by someone else's choices. And when people sense that balance, when they sense that grounded confidence, they lean in ways that are deeper, more meaningful, and far more sustainable than anything forced. So the next time you're tempted to over-explain, over-text, or chase after someone, pause. Ask yourself, am I giving them the space to choose me? Am I holding my own energy? Am I showing up as someone worth being intentionally pursued? Because that's the subtle genius of attraction. The power isn't in the pursuit. The power is in the presence. And when you step fully into that, you'll realize something quietly. Revolutionary. Attraction is no longer a struggle. It's a reflection of your own alignment, your own clarity, and your own self-respect. And suddenly, the people who are meant to be in your life don't need to be chased. They naturally find their way there.